Hey there everybody, and today I want to talk to you about what I learned about mindset from ultra endurance running. Hey there everybody, my name's Dave, aka Mindset by Dave, and as well as being a mindset and mental health coach for the past 4 years, I've really recently got into ultra running. Now this basically goes against all common sense, but we'll get into that in a bit, because my background is in bodybuilding and weightlifting, and I'm pretty much quite a big guy, 6'2" and 111 kilos. Not what you would typically consider primed for running, but, well, we're not going to let that stop us, are we? Before we get into the main content, just a quick couple of plugs for my channel. Number one, if you like the content on here, please hit that subscribe button. It is priceless to you, but priceless to me. And secondly, if you head on over to twitch.tv/mindsetbydave, then we talk on there every Sunday night from 7 till 10 p.m. and every Tuesday from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m, where we can talk about mindset, mental health and personal development and all fun things like that. Okay, let's get into the content. So I first got really into running a few years back when I was a personal trainer, and it wasn't actually running that I got into, it was Tough Mudders. I went and did a Tough Mudder with some of my clients as a way to motivate and inspire them, and I got pretty damn hooked on them in the process. Now, this last weekend actually would have been our 5th year on a row running that race together. However, thanks to 2020, that got cancelled. But the running book doesn't just go to that. So as I'm primarily a mindset coach, this isn't going to be about running technique or anything to do with that. It's going to be about how we manage up here to help us get more out there. So let's get into it. Number one, and especially for those that are classed as overweight like myself, the fear of running because it's bad for your joints. Now, I actually let this fear grip me for the longest of times, and thanks to the fact I used to be obese, but then when I actually lost a lot of weight, I put on a ton of muscle. So according to the government guidelines, I am, and pretty much always will be, overweight. And as a result, shouldn't run because, the whole 4 times your body weight go through your joints every time they hit the floor. But you know what? That may be bad for my joints, but you know what's really worse for them? Sitting on the couch and doing nothing. Now, if, for example, you absolutely love getting out there and using low impact sports, like you love getting out there and swimming and you love getting on a cross trainer, these things that take the impact off your joints, and you can enjoy those things and you can get on with them fine, then great, do those. But if running actually really appeals to you, but the fear of it being bad for your joints is the one thing that holds you back, then I would encourage you to get out there and give it a go. I let that fear hold me back for the longest of times, and it also held me back in terms of the number of training sessions I did. And one of the big things I have found is that you do discover just what you are capable of. Those rules are for statistics. You are not a statistic, you're an individual. So give it a whirl and see how you get on, rather than making the assumption based on an arbitrary rule. Number 2, break your goals down into smaller goals. So my most recent endurance run was 42 miles, but it was actually 12 hours. It was 12 hours to cover as much distance as I possibly could. And I went out there with the aim to do 34 miles because I was running for a charity called Sean's Place. And Sean, who it is named after, took his own life when he was 34. So I wanted to actually hit 34 miles for Sean was the goal. I wouldn't have been able to do that going out there going, I have to hit 34 miles. Or as soon as I got out into those woods and started running and thinking about it, the idea of 34 miles is an overwhelming number. So what I did is I broke it down into much smaller, more manageable goals. There's only this next mile, there's this mile, there's that K, wherever it is, actually chopping and changing between miles and kilometers so that you actually break it up into even more goals. It's like, okay, at 3 miles, you get 3 miles, but then at 3.1 miles, you get 5K. At 6 miles, you get 6 miles, but then at 6.2 miles, you get 10K, and so on and so forth. So that was the whole way in which I broke it down. And then once I'd got past certain sections as well, it's like, okay, I've done 10 miles now. Okay, let's get on to the next 10 miles, but then even breaking that down further into let's do the next mile. Breaking it down because we try and do everything at once. When our brain tries to cope with such a massive goal, especially if it's not really your thing, then it's going to want to shy away from it. Break it down into something that is manageable for you. And it doesn't matter how far you have to break it down in order to do that. It's possible to just keep on breaking it down until you find the thing that you say, yeah, actually, I can do that. Even if it's, I'm going to run for 10 more breaths. Number 2, and you've probably heard the cliche, it never gets any easier, you just get stronger. But I actually prefer to use the good old Ross Geller approach to this of, it's all relative. It's relative to where you are at the position that you're in right now. Starting out, the first things are actually going to be difficult, but then you'll get a clear understanding of what actually is difficult for you, and the things that were once difficult become easier. As that goes on, you might then up the difficulty of the things that you do, and as a result, your shorter runs become easier by comparison. So yeah, actually, it does get easier. The things that you surpass get easier. It gets easier because you get stronger, which I think is a much better way of actually saying it. Because if you get better at things, a 5K will be easier for you. If you get better at half marathons, a 10K will be easier for you. If you get better at marathons, a half marathon will be easier for you. I genuinely never thought I would consider myself a runner. I literally used to only run when I was preparing for Tough Mudders. However, this is the first time in my life that I've ran for about 2 straight years now without a break, and I just can't get enough of it. And that's down to the fact that this relative difficulty has changed. So now actually when I look at it, I've done 3 marathons this year plus an ultra marathon. I think now that my training runs are 10Ks and half marathons, whereas my training runs used to be 1 mile, maybe a 5K, maybe at most a 10K. And actually now the relative difficulty of those things to me, I consider the 10K run to be my short run now. And if I was going out for an event right now, I'd probably look at half marathon as the minimum distance. And honestly, I genuinely never thought that I'd be sat here saying that. I always thought that that would be a long ass run for me, and a marathon would be, I'm never doing that again. I vowed to never do another marathon after my first one. I've now done 4. It does get easier because you get stronger. And remember that, because what you consider to be your hardest run right now will one day be your warm-up. Number 3, it always sucks at the start. Now this may seem to be a direct contradiction of the rule I've just said, but one of the things that's never changed for me, and this could be different from person to person, but one of the things that's never really changed for me is the beginning always sucks. The starting point is always the hardest part for me. And if I've hit my distance right, the second hardest part for me is the last mile. So I actually call this a really nice sandwich on really crappy bread, because I genuinely enjoy the middle bit. But the thing is, if we focus on that initial discomfort, that initial pain, we're never going to want to get out the door. We have to actually see beyond that to what's actually coming next. For me, that is whatever's in the middle of that run's going to be enjoyable for me. So if I'm doing a 10 miler, I'll have a sucky mile at the beginning, a sucky mile at the end, but then I'll get like 8 kind of nice miles where my head will be clear, where I'll enjoy myself while I'm out there. I can't believe I'm admitting these things, I really can't. This just honestly can only reiterate how much I never thought this would be me. And that is ultimately why I'm making this video. Number 4, it's supposed to be difficult, especially if you are going for a challenge. So when I went for the Manchester Marathon last year, this was my first run above 18 miles. And my brain actually found new territory that I'd previously unexplored at this point. I'm very much a treat people with compassion, treat people with kindness, believe them if they say that they've got nothing more, and then trying to gently encourage them to give an extra 1 or 5%. That wasn't the way my brain was working at this point. Literally, it was like having a conversation inside my head where one side would be like, I really can't do this, and the other side would say, and? It's like, my legs are really hurting, and? I've got no energy left, and honestly, it was like I had this really harsh drill sergeant inside my own head. And I liked him at the time because he got me through the rest of the marathon. However, over the course of the last year and a half since that day, I've been refining them a little bit, and now I've come to the conclusion that what he meant by that "and" is it's supposed to be difficult. If your legs are tired at 18 miles, they're supposed to be. You don't run 18 miles every day. If you feel like you've got nothing left in the tank, that's how you're supposed to feel, because you've not tested that part of you to that level that often or ever. If you feel like it's a challenge, it's supposed to be a challenge. And especially this is true when we're doing stuff like a charity event like the 42 miler I did recently. It's supposed to be a challenge. And when we actually look at that, instead of going, this is really challenging or this is really hard, I can't go on, we go, this is really hard, but it's supposed to be really hard. This means I'm actually doing it. This means I'm actually achieving what I set out to do. The fact that it's hard, if you got to that point in the run and you were like, this is dead easy, you've probably not set your challenge actually high enough. If your goal is to challenge yourself, then it should be challenging. Number 5, we get good at the things we do often. Now, you've probably seen this in a separate video, which I'll pop a little link to now, but we get good at when our body says no, we go, okay. We get really, really good at that. If we get out to a certain point on a race and our body says, no, not doing this anymore, not going, and we go, okay, then we get really, really good at that. If we decide to stop and call it short every single time that our body or our mind says stop, then we condition ourselves to listen to it. And actually one of the things you need to do is condition yourself to actually ignore it. So even if that is just like we talked about in the smaller goals, if that is, I'm going to go another 100 meters, I'm going to go another 20 steps, even if you get used to going one step beyond where your brain says stop, you begin to prove to yourself that there's more in the tank than you think. And this is a journey of self-discovery. We're actually trying to test our limits and trying to see what is in the tank rather than just going off our initial assumption of what is there. So sometimes we need to actually push beyond that and see what's there. And there's always something beyond there. It might be 5 steps, it might be another 5 miles. We don't know until we try. But we need to get good at actually, when it says stop, saying, no, I'm going to go a little bit further. Don't want to run ourselves into the ground, but we're going to go a little bit further. And finally, a couple of tips about your route choice. There's 2 ways that I've found that actually work for this. One of them is choosing an out and back route, and the other one is choosing a loop route, and there are pros and cons to both. With an out and back route, what I would say is that you want an out and back route where the goal you're trying to get to is guaranteed by you getting to where you're going and then coming back. So let's say you're going for 6 miles. You set an out and back route of 3 miles. Then, just like we talked about in rule number 1 about breaking it down into smaller goals, instead of focusing on I've got to do 6 miles today, you go I've got to do those 3 miles. When you get to that 3 mile point and you turn around and you start heading home, you'll basically have a choice to carry on running or to walk. And actually, even though running might be uncomfortable at that point, walking might be uncomfortable too. In fact, it might feel uncomfortably slow, but you've got no choice in order to get home. You have to get home by doing that. I used to do this route where I would actually leave both my phone and all my money and stuff at home as well. So I couldn't just go and get a taxi or anything like that. I would have no choice but to get home, be unable to give anybody a call to come and pick me up or anything like that. And I'd make it so it was a necessity that I had to get home. Another variation on this, which actually I've had done before, is I'll get a friend to drop me off 10 miles away from home. And then I've got a one-way route, and the only way I'm getting home is by running it. When we have that necessity, when we're not getting home any other way, it just makes you go that one step beyond. And the second one is loop routes. With a loop route, you could set it really, really short. We have this loop near us that's 1.7 miles. And that loop, I will often drive to that loop and then go, you know what? I don't feel like much like running today, so I'm just going to do 1 lap and see how I get on. And then basically, if I get to the start of that, if I tell myself 1 more lap, or there is only this lap, which is often what I would say, if I make it past the start point and start going, I almost get another guaranteed 1.7 miles. The hard decision is going past the start point of the loop, but then once I'm on the loop, my brain actually switches into a mode where it says, right, well, we've started this loop now, so we're going to finish it. And I will tell myself every single time that there is just one lap. This is how I built up to doing a few extra marathons this year, a few extra half marathons, and the 42-mile loop. The 42-mile run that I did was all on this one loop of 1.7 miles. So I would just keep on going around that, and each time I got to the entrance, it was just like, okay, one more, one more, one more. Or I'm feeling a little bit like DJ Khaled here, another one. Basically, you focus on the one that you have to do, and you break it down into smaller segments, so the whole thing makes it easier. So as always, I hope that you have enjoyed this content, and if you have done, please hit that subscribe button. Remember, it is priceless to you, but it is priceless to me. And if you do want to join in with any conversations live about personal development, about mindset, about mental health, twitch.tv/mindsetbydave every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. and every Tuesday daytime at 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. And I would love to see you down there. I'll catch you soon.